Hello everyone, this is Leah Simpson with the University of Kentucky's Office of Assessment. In this video I want to talk to you a bit about how you might create what we call an A+ Improvement Action Plan. Improvement Action Plans are the yearly assessment reports that all academic and some non-academic programs turn in via Blackboard. These are the ones where you detail the outcomes that your program assessed, the ways in which that was completed, and the results of that assessment. Now, before you complete your report, it's important to know who's going to look at it. First and foremost, these reports are for you and your peers. The Office of Assessment encourages you to share your assessment data within your department so that everyone knows what's been done and the plans for moving forward. Assessment should be program-wide and include all of the people who are responsible for the program's success. Second, accrediting bodies might be looking at your assessment reports. Now, SACS reviewers are certainly going to have access to all of this data, but your program might want to use this information for your own private accrediting bodies as well. Finally, the university's leadership, the Office of Assessment, and the UAC will be reading through your reports. In case you're unaware, the UAC stands for University Assessment Council. There is at least one representative from every college, as well as Student Affairs, Undergraduate Education, and UK Libraries that sits on this committee. If you want more information about the UAC, please visit the Office of Assessment's website. Now, obviously, there are several groups that might be reading your assessment information, and only one or two of those groups is likely to have any real understanding of how your program runs. So remember that when you write, it's unlikely that a UAC reviewer, or perhaps even an Office of Assessment reviewer, will be familiar with your specific program's jargon or processes. For that reason, you might need to be a bit more descriptive in writing your report. What might be obvious to you and your peers may be very confusing for an outsider. The second step to writing a high-quality improvement action plan is to know your rubric. If you haven't taken time to get to know the rubric, please do so in advance of writing your yearly report. You can find it on the Blackboard Outcomes Resources page, which you can link to from our Office of Assessment website. Look over the requirements of the rubric and use it to help you complete all the necessary parts of the report. Now, to find the rubric on our Outcomes website, simply go to Outcomes Tutorials and you should see the rubric right there. There are a few areas of the rubric that I want to emphasize. First is methodology. Now, you don't have to write a book, but it is important that you give your audience enough information so that they can understand not only how you completed the assessment, but why you chose to complete it in that way. If the faculty in your program assessed an assignment from Class 247, please help readers understand why 247 was the appropriate class. It's also important to tell readers how you gathered your evidence. When you say you assessed that specific paper, did you assess all of the papers from students in that course? Or did you assess only a sample of the papers? And if so, how did you find your sample? Did you use a rubric or a scoring guide, or were the papers assigned a grade at the reviewer's discretion? Now, this is what an example might look like. The one on the top is not at all an unusual response in the reports, but you can see it gives reviewers very little information about what actually took place for the assessment. A better example is on the bottom. In 2 short paragraphs, we can gather that the course where the assessment took place was 247, the reason why that course and assignment were the appropriate one to evaluate, and the number of students in that course, and the number of evaluations that took place, and the process used to evaluate all of it. Now, another area of the report that often needs to be beefed up is the analysis section, which we're referring to now as the interpretation of results. In your report, it's important to explain why you and your peers believe the results were whatever it was that they were. Often what we receive in this area is a simple restatement of the results, but what we'd rather know is if your faculty found the results odd or confusing. Were they happy with or troubled with the results? Do they have any ideas or suspicions about why these results were what they were? Now, again, you can see an example on the top of a common response to this area, but at the bottom there's an example of what might be a more appropriate response. It's not uncommon at all for me to talk to faculty and have them tell me all of the things that they discussed once they saw the reports of the results of their assessment, and yet they don't share this rich conversation in the report. Put it in the report. Now let's talk about the action of your report. We call this an improvement action plan because it's expected that your program will take action to improve. Something needs to happen in order for your program to get better. And even if your program is doing very well, there's always room for improvement. Even the #1 programs in the country work to improve. Otherwise, they won't stay #1 for long. So explain in your report what steps your program is going to take to get better. Will you change your curriculum? Will you offer new services? If you're happy with your results, it may be a good time to investigate your benchmark. Perhaps you should set the mark just a little bit higher. And finally, think about when you plan to review this outcome again. Ideally, you'll only change a few things at a time. It's important once you make changes to give them a bit of time to start working. So if you make changes to your curriculum, you might want to give it a time or two in order for everything to really mesh. Our goal isn't to have you change everything every single year, so make a change here or there and then set a plan in place for reviewing that action and change to see if it had the impact that you had hoped for. Now, requirements for the Improvement Action Plan can be found at the bottom of the rubric. And when you're writing about your Improvement Action Plan, please note that we want to see detail. Who is going to be responsible for carrying out these actions? What is the time frame for putting it into place? These are the types of things that we'd like to know, as is exemplified by the bottom example. Finally, have you properly told your story? A good improvement action plan is one that both your peers and outside reviewers can understand. It should give enough detail so that someone who's not involved in the assessment process can replicate it should they need to. And it should give all the right background information about why the assessment took place, who was involved, and how decisions were made going forward. So to remember, to write an A+ improvement action plan, you need to give enough information so that all your decisions and activities are explained. But it needs to be short enough to be read in one setting. You don't need to write a 60-page report. A few well thought out paragraphs in each area should be sufficient. As always, if you have any questions about this or other assessment topics, please contact me in the Office of Assessment. Thank you.